you know, if the NDP or any other party has ideas, specific ideas to help the economy that are effective and affordable, we will always consider them. But, you know, frankly, in this parliament, I think we have to be realistic. We've been very disappointed when we've had things the NDP asked for. You know, we've done lots of programs to help workers, to help the unemployed, to pay for retraining. The NDP has voted against those. The investments that are funding today's announcement on the Sault Ste. Marie Bridge, the NDP voted against all of those. The NDP has been very proud of the fact, Mr. Layton says it over and over again, that in 4 years he has never once supported the government on anything important. So, you know, that's their position. If it changes, you know, if people want to work together on things that will help the economy, we're willing to do that. But we have no indication of that from Mr. Layton.
Mr. Ignatieff, yesterday you made a big deal about saying Canada has to do a better job on the world stage and how important your trip was to China, especially because the Prime Minister has not been there. Why are you canceling your trip? And I'm wondering what it is that's so crucial for you to do in the next week that couldn't wait till you got back.
We want to see how the political situation develops. Mr. Harper has some cards to play. Mr. Duceppe has some cards to play. Mr. Layton has the cards to play. And it seems to me responsible for me to be here while those issues are clarifying.
Thank you.
You keep saying a Liberal government would do better. On, say, an issue like the environment, how would a Liberal government do better?
Well, you're going to see a platform rolled out very soon.
Is there anything the Prime Minister could offer you or say to you at this stage? Is it the 11th hour? Is it too late to turn back your plan? And what's your take on the NDP's mixed messages in reaction to your...
Julia, just to make it clear, we're not in negotiation here. We did that in June. So that's the response to the first question. The second question is, it's up to the NDP to decide. I can't decide for other parties.
You talk a lot about consultation with your caucus, what the other parties want. I'm wondering how much consideration you've given to what Canadians want, because we've seen on Twitter, even at your own rally yesterday, people were saying we don't want to go to the polls. And secondly, since EI has sort of faded as the main issue, can you tell Canadians, if it comes to an election, when they go to that ballot box, what's the central issue they're voting on that you're bringing down this government that we need to have an election over?
No responsible politician thinks about these issues without thinking always about the Canadian people and their interests. I'm doing it because I really, in my heart of hearts, believe that we can offer Canadians a more compassionate and more competent government. The ballot question, to answer your question, is who is best placed to lead Canada into the economy of tomorrow?
The first question is on the deficit, and you say it's, you know, the biggest in Canadian history, yet you're the one that was encouraging Stephen Harper to spend. You're not spending fast enough regarding stimulus. So first question, how can you have it both ways on the deficit? And secondly, don't you think you owe it to Canadians to tell them how you, in broad terms, would get rid of the deficit? Would it be through tax hikes, program cuts, or both?
We are very concerned about the size of the deficit. We will not come to the Canadian public with proposals that break the bank. Remember, we've been here before. We inherited a $42 billion deficit from Mr. Mulroney, and we had to clean it up, and we did so without raising taxes. We've inherited a $50 billion hole from Mr. Harper. We will clean it up without raising taxes. Merci.
Yeah, how?
How will you do it?
Yeah.
Wait and see.
A lot of Quebecers and a lot of Canadians are asking, they're watching all of you guys, you party leaders, talk about this issue of whether we'll have an election this fall or not. What message would you send to people who aren't quite sure what's happening right now?
Well, I'm telling the people we always had the same kind of attitude in Ottawa. We're not asking ourselves, do we want an election or not? We're considering each issue at its own value. If it's good for Quebec, if it goes in the Quebec's interest direction, we're supporting it. If not, we're opposing it, and then we're facing the consequences. Would it be an election or not? I think this is what it is to be responsible in politics. We're putting the Quebec's interest before the party's interest.
So in the political climate you're in right now, what is likely to happen?
Well, I'm a Yogi Berra fan. I don't make any prediction, especially those concerning the future. But I'm telling you that we're ready.
Mr. Duceppe, yesterday, Mr. Ignatieff said Mr. Harper's time is up. I believe you heard that statement here.
Yeah.
How much more time are you going to give him? You seem to be interested in evaluating it issue by issue. I understand that. But how long can you go on like this?
How much time I'm giving to who? Harper or Ignatieff?
Mr. Harper.
I mean, I'm considering both of them.
Still the Prime Minister, right? So
Yes.
how much time are you giving that government?
I mean, it depends of them. We made our proposals very clear last November and again in April. So on each issue, we're ready. We have concrete proposals based on Quebec's interest, period. If they said, well, we'll apply those proposals because we think it's good, then no problem, we'll support that. If not, we'll oppose that, and then we'll be facing the consequences.
Our government is committed to working on the economy. That is what we have been doing since we were re-elected. That's what we've been doing this summer. That's what we will continue to do. That's what I would urge the opposition parties to do. We will not be making any backroom deals. If other parties, as I said before, other parties have useful ideas, good, effective, affordable ideas on the economy, let us see what they are and we'll take a look at them. That's been our position all through this Parliament. As you know, we've been very flexible in terms of bringing forward initiatives and programs, but we will not be doing backroom deals. We already had, people know there's, the deal between the NDP, the Bloc, and the Liberals. People didn't like that. I don't think we want to go there. So we're not going to be getting into that kind of deal. We already know those guys have a deal, and I don't want to get into that kind of game. But let me just say this. I will say one other thing, because I did notice last night that Mr. Ignatieff said, well, the NDP has cards to play and the Bloc has cards to play. This is not a card game. This is not a game. We're here as a government and as a parliament. We're supposed to be focused on the economy. We see the signs of the recovery. That's what we should be focusing on, getting the recovery going forward. It bothers me when I see parties are worried that there's a recovery. They want to force an election before we get too deep into a recovery, and that's not responsible. It's the responsibility of all of us in Parliament to make the economy work for Canadians. That's what we're doing. Obviously, we invite anybody who has some useful and concrete ideas in that regard.
Whether or not we have a fall election is not a question I can answer. The ball is entirely in Stephen Harper's court. Because with minority parliaments, the Prime Minister has a responsibility to understand that he cannot govern alone. Canadians did not give the Conservatives a majority. They elected a minority parliament, which calls upon the government to work to find common ground and to work together where possible. I'm not making any backroom deals with the Prime Minister. I'm simply suggesting that it's time for him to show some leadership, to reach out and make Parliament work.
What would the Prime Minister have to do on your three major issues, EI, pension protection, and credit card ATM fees, to gain your support in the coming weeks?
He would have to indicate that he's willing to take action on these issues, and then we'd have to nail down precisely what those actions are. We've laid them out in motions in the House of Commons that have actually been adopted by the House of Commons. So there's no secret as to what we think ought to happen. It's very, very public.
Yeah, I guess earlier this afternoon we heard from the Prime Minister, and yesterday I think we heard from the Prime Minister refer to some backroom deal that you have with Mr. Ignatieff and Mr. Duceppe, that the coalition or some form of coalition the Prime Minister is suggesting still seems to be active. I wonder if you'd care to comment on that.
The answer is no.
Mr. Ignatieff, the economy has created, I guess, 21,000 jobs in August. Does this undercut the sort of economic argument for an election, and if it does, what replaces it?
I think the economy is still struggling. I've been across the country from coast to coast to coast this summer. 1.5 million Canadians are looking for work. Bankruptcies are up 50%, and we're staggering along with a $50 billion deficit, and the OECD says we're going to have the slowest and most painful recovery of any country.
What would you say to critics who say this is nothing more, this ploy, to force an election than a crass political move because you think this is your best opportunity to seize power?
I think there's nothing reckless about trying to offer Canadians a clear alternative, a better alternative. There is nothing that would jeopardize recovery. Our recovery is halting and slow and difficult under this government. We think we could accelerate recovery and make it more effective. So we're genuinely acting in the interests of all Canadians. And at a certain point, I just think you just have to stand and say, enough is enough. We can do better.